putting YouTube clips of the show. I'm doing YouTube clips, and I'm going to be putting those up on YouTube. If you want to check out the YouTube clips, they just go to my YouTube channel, which is Charles Lamson's webcam video, and yeah, you'll see a bunch of clips from previous shows there, and go check it out. Okay, so let's get back into Bernays here. Okay, so like I was saying before, I just said that though. Okay, and the new advertising, yeah, PR guys, they try to get rid of sales. Instead of attacking resistance, they try to remove sales resistance. They create circumstances in which will swing emotional currents so as to make for purchaser demand. If, for instance, I want to sell pianos, it is not sufficient to blanket the country with a direct appeal such as, "You buy a Mozart piano now. It is cheap. The best artists use it. It will last for years." And this is where, yeah, Bernays' craftiness really comes in. This guy pretty much revolutionized how public relations works, and how it works hand in hand with advertising. But anyway, so the claims may all be true, the piano claims, that is, but they are in direct conflict with the claims of other piano manufacturers, and in indirect competition with the claims of a radio or a motor car, each competing for the consumer's dollar. What are the true reasons why the purchaser is planning to spend his money on a new car instead of a new piano? Because he has decided that he wants the commodity called locomotion or transportation more than he wants the commodity called music. Not altogether. He buys a car because it is, at the moment, the group custom to buy cars. The modern propagandist, therefore, sets to work to create circumstances which will modify that custom. He appeals perhaps to the home instinct, which is fundamental. He will endeavor to develop public acceptance of the idea of a music room in the home. This he may do, for example, by organizing an exhibition of period music rooms designed by well-known decorators who themselves exert an influence on the buying groups. He enhances the effectiveness and prestige of these rooms by putting in them rare and valuable tapestries. Then, in order to create dramatic interest in the exhibit, he stages an event or ceremony. To this ceremony, key people, persons known to influence the buying habits of the public, such as a famous violinist, a popular artist, and a society leader, are invited. These key persons affect other groups, lifting the idea of the music room to a place in the public consciousness which it did not have before. The juxtaposition of these leaders and the idea which they are dramatizing are then projected to the wider public through various publicity channels. Meanwhile, influential architects have been persuaded to make the music room an integral architectural part of their plans, with perhaps a specially charming niche and one corner for the piano. Less influential architects will, as a matter of course, imitate what is done by the men whom they consider masters of their profession. They, in turn, will implant the idea of the music room in the mind of the general public. Yeah, once again, there's this notion, Bernays talks about, yeah, if you want to sway public opinion, you go for the leaders first. And then if you can sway the leaders to do a certain thing, the rest of the sheep will follow. The music room will be accepted because it has been made the thing. And the man or woman who has a music room or has arranged a corner of the parlor as a musical corner will naturally think of buying a piano. It will come to him as his own idea. Under the old salesmanship, the manufacturer said to the prospective purchaser, "Please buy a piano." The new salesmanship has reversed the process and caused the prospective purchaser to say to the manufacturer, "Please sell me a piano." The value of the associative processes in propaganda is shown in connection with a large real estate development. To emphasize that Jackson Heights was socially desirable, every attempt was made to produce this associative process. A benefit performance of the jitney players was staged for the benefit of earthquake victims of Japan under the auspices of Mrs. Astor and others. Mrs. Astor, who he's referring to is, was like a, in the 20s, I guess, the Astor family, live in New York, very, 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 very wealthy family. So, yeah, Mrs. Astor was like a great socialite of the time. That's what he's referring to. Under the auspices of Mrs. Astor and others. The social advantages of the place were projected, a golf course was laid out, and a clubhouse planned. When the post office was open, the Public Relations Council attempted to use it as a focus for national interest and discovered that its opening fell coincident with a date important in the annals of the American Postal Service. This was then made the basis of the opening. When an attempt was made to show the public the beauty of the apartments, a competition was held among interior decorators for the best furnished apartment in Jackson Heights. An important committee of judges decided the competition drew the approval of well-known authorities as well as the interest of millions, who were made cognizant of it through newspaper and magazine and other publicity, with the effect of building up definitely the prestige of the development. One of the most effective methods is the utilization of group formation of modern society in order to spread ideas. An example of this is the nationwide competitions for sculpture in ivory soap, open to school children in certain age groups, as well as professional sculptors. A sculptor of national reputation found ivory soap an excellent medium for sculpture. By the way, this was all totally Edward Bernays' idea to sell ivory soap. He put on these ivory soap sculpting competitions throughout in schools throughout America, and in doing so, sales of ivory soap went through the roof. The Procter & Gamble company offered a series of prizes for the best sculpture in white soap. Notice how he's leaving his name out of this campaign. It's kind of funny, but yeah, he was actually the one who ran this campaign for Procter & Gamble. The contest was held under the auspices of the Art Center in New York City, an organization of high standing in the art world. School superintendents and teachers throughout the country were glad to encourage the movement as an educational aid for schools. Practice among school children as part of their art courses was stimulated. Contests were held between schools, between school districts, and between cities. Ivory soap was adaptable for sculpturing in the homes because mothers saved the shavings and the imperfect efforts for laundry purposes. Okay. The work itself was clean. The best pieces are selected from the local competitions for entry in the national contest. And this is held annually at an important art gallery in New York, whose prestige, with that of the distinguished judges, establishes the contest as a serious art event. Once again, Bernays was behind this whole thing, this whole ivory soap sculpture contest, and like I said, it resulted in putting ivory soap sales through the roof. I think he also claimed, he somehow got like a bunch of doctors on board to write letters to newspapers and stuff like that, and to say, I guess he's one of the first guys that that came up with this. Hey, 4 out of 5 dentists say blah blah blah. But yeah, he was like with doctors, and he said that the majority of doctors claim that ivory soap is medically superior to other soaps. I'm not quite sure what medically superior soap is, but all right. Anyway, in the first of these national competitions, about 500 pieces of sculpture were entered. In the third, 2,500, and in the fourth, more than 4,000. So yeah, this is a big campaign. A 4-year. I don't know if this is still an actual annual competition or not. But I don't know. I never heard of it. I've been around for 41 years now. I've never, until I started looking into Edward Bernays, I'd never heard of ivory soap sculpting contests. But so I'm thinking it might have died down before our time. Anyway, so if the carefully selected pieces were so numerous, it is evident that a vast number were sculptured during the year, and that a much greater number must have been made for practice purposes. The goodwill was greatly enhanced by the fact that this soap had become not merely the concern of the housewife, but also a matter of personal and intimate interest to her children. So, a number of familiar psychological motives were set in motion in the carrying out of this campaign: the ascetic, the competitive, the gregarious, in parentheses, much of the sculpturing was done in school groups, the snobbish, the impulse to follow the example of a recognized leader, the exhibitionist, and last, but by no means least, the maternal. All these motives and group habits were put in concerted motion by the simple machinery of group leadership and authority. As if actuated by the pressure of a button, people began working for the client for the sake of the gratification obtained in the sculpture work itself. This point is mind you, at the same time, all this stuff has absolutely nothing to do with soap. I mean, what the product of soap is actually used for. It's just this guy is so clever, but anyway, right, all these motives, okay, so this point is most important in successful propaganda work. The leaders who lend their authority to any propaganda campaign will do so only if it can be made to touch their own interests. There must be a disinterested aspect of the propagandist's activities. In other words, it is one of the functions of the Public Relations Council to discover at what points his client's interests coincide with those of other individuals or groups. In the case of the soap sculpture competition, the distinguished artists and educators who sponsored the idea were glad to lend their services and their names because the competitions really promoted an interest which they had at heart: the cultivation of the aesthetic impulse among the younger generation. Such coincidence and overlapping of interests is as infinite as the interlacing of group formations themselves. For example, a railway wishes to develop its business. The Council on Public Relations makes a survey to discover at what points its interests coincide with those of its prospective customers. The company then establishes relations with chambers of commerce along its right-of-way and assists them in developing their communities. It helps them to secure new plants and industries for the town. It facilitates business through the dissemination of technical information. It is not merely a case of bestowing favors in the hope of receiving favors. These activities of the railroad, besides creating goodwill, will actually promote growth on its right-of-way. The interests of the railroad and the communities through which it passes mutually interact and feed one another. In the same way, a bank institutes an investment service for the benefit of its customers, in order that the latter may have more money to deposit with the bank. Or a jewelry concern develops an insurance department to insure the jewels it sells, in order to make the purchaser feel greater security in buying jewels. Or a baking company establishes an information service suggesting recipes for bread